Hi everyone, it's Lisa Starr with StarrCast. I'm here with another guest from the other side of the world. Now, this is someone that I've known for many years, and it took me only about 2 months to track her down to get her to be on StarrCast because she's very busy. And it's also very difficult to connect with people from Australia. So I'd like to welcome Sam Dunn to the program. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Lisa. It's absolutely wonderful to chat at last. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to think back on when we met. I cannot remember. Some conference somewhere in Asia is my guess. Do you have any recollection?
I think it was probably one of the first Spa China summits, maybe. The lovely Fifi Cow brought us together. Right. Although I had been to iSpa, although I was completely overwhelmed by iSpa.
Yes.
And maybe even the early Global Wellness Summits.
Or even
Spa,
it could have been Spa Asia too.
Yes, okay. There was the Asia Spa and Spa Asia.
I know, right? Oh my goodness, so many things. So at any rate, Samantha and I met, and she worked in spa, and we're going back because both of us are almost dinosaurs in this field. She's consulted, she's worked at amazing properties like Chivasam, which she'll tell us about. And she's always on the cutting edge of what's new and coming up. And I'm always anxious to see her trend presentations because they're always super cool. So I was so happy she had time to speak with us. But I digress. We want to learn, Sam, about how you got to where you are now in wellness, in spa and wellness. And you grew up in Australia, yes?
Yes, yeah. Born in Sydney.
And what did you think you wanted to do when you grew up?
It's been such a convoluted journey. Actually, what I thought I wanted to do was be a doctor. I'd started off, as a kid. I was dancing 6 days a week, and ballet, etc. was my life. And I was umming and ahhing between being a dancer or some
dancer, doctor.
Dancer, doctor. Well, but at that stage, I had knee injuries, and my teacher said, go get your degree, and if you're still interested, then come back and be a dancer. But anyway, so I decided not to be a dancer. But then at that stage, I had lots of allergies. So I was super fit, but loads of allergies to food, grass, cats, you name it. And my mum, the doctors were going to have me on like steroid creams and injections for the rest of my life. And my mum was a bit of a hippie. Yeah, so my hippie mum took me off to a naturopath who was visiting from Greenland, because in those days, Australia didn't even have naturopaths. So this is back when I was about 10, 11. And, this woman sort of like looked in my eyes, my tongue, my nails, burned a bit of my hair.
Wow.
I was like, who is this witch? Anyway, and then she took one look at me and said, okay, drink this herbal medicine, eat this, don't eat that. Basically just some guidelines and about my diet, and you'll be cured in 6 weeks. Now, of course, you can't say that these days, but I was cured in 4. So after 4 weeks, I could even bought a cat. They were my big allergies. So anyway, what I thought was, oh my gosh, if that's what a naturopath can do, imagine being a doctor. So I had always thought I would love to be a doctor. But then when the time came at the end of my school days and I sat my HSC, in Australia is the sort of university entrance exam, I completely blew it. And so I didn't get into medicine, but what I did get into was nuclear medicine technology, because they could take you in on aptitude. And I thought, oh, well, I'll train as a nuclear medicine technologist and then transition into medicine later down the track.
Right, good plan.
And I tell you what, that was such a blessing, because it took me, because nuclear medicine, there's only like 6 of you in the country, they put you straight into the hospital system and then you study a couple of days and nights a week. And so I was in the hospital system and I could see from day one, this wasn't what I was signing up for.
Wow.
I was signing up to heal people, and it was all about sickness. Everyone was labeled with, oh, this is, my patients were another bone scan, heart scan, AIDS scan, whatever. And it was very dehumanized, and the environment wasn't pleasant. And anyway, so that was a very quick wake-up call.
Quick and valuable lesson, right? Like,
it was so good. It was so good. And so, you see these kids who stress about university entrance. That was the best thing that could have happened to me, was really blowing that exam. So at the end of that first year of traineeship, I thought, well, obviously this isn't where I want to go. So I quit that job and I just got any old office job in a merchant bank at the time. And the merchant bank was fast growing. They had 3 people when I started, and I think they had like 103 by the time I left. But what that did do was I started as sort of like an office junior, and I was working through money markets, private client management, assistant accounting, and you could only get so far before you had to have a degree. So I went back to uni and, I missed a little bit of my story, which was while I was in nuclear medicine, because I was dealing with death and dying and greyness and bleakness all day, I did a diploma in beauty therapy for fun on the side, just because it was fluffy and pink and, anyway.
Positive.
It was positive. And as a dancer, I'd really enjoyed doing the stage makeups and things. And so I did the diploma in beauty therapy. So when I quit the merchant banking job to go to full-time uni, I worked part-time in cosmetic retail. So that's when I used that diploma in beauty therapy to be able to do a part-time job there. So did that for, 4 years or so for my degree, and then got a job in advertising. But all the time I kept studying. So I was in advertising then for, a decade or so, but studying wellness therapies all the time, because you know what it's like, Lisa. You start studying one thing, you hear about the next, and then you hear about the next. So I think, by the end of my days...
You just never lost your interest in that topic.
Never lost it. So I think I've got, at the moment, I've got like 6 diplomas and another 20-something certificates.
There's quite a lot of certifications on your LinkedIn. She's a very well-credentialed young lady.
But it's such an exciting industry. There's always more to learn, and it's changing all the time. So my latest things, biohacking, functional medicine, all of that kind of thing. There's always something to learn. So anyway, by the end of my time in advertising, I thought, why am I spending 80 hours a week in a job that was exciting but not aligned with passions, really, and then still cramming in these studies on the side? So I took a 75% pay cut and became a spa manager with Gillette, which is a natural skincare brand in Australia.
Sure.
And then I sort of that got me into spa management, which was a bit of a shock to my system after the corporate world, because in those days it wasn't really well organised or very corporately run.
That's why they hired you, Sam.
Well, it was, I have to say, I learned some super good lessons there, which is what I didn't do was I didn't delegate. Because, when I started in there, and actually I have to step back. First day in there, I sort of course, just given up my corporate job, get ready, first day in the spa, go up to the counter, say, hi, I'm Sam. And they say, oh, have you got an appointment? I was like, no, I'm the new manager. And they said, like, oh, have we got a new manager? And so I was like, no one knew I was coming. No one was ready for me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, have I done the right thing? So that was walking into that kind of environment where there was no systems, no structure. So it was a matter of just watching, learning. And then, of course, because of sort of backgrounds in business, plus all of my studies, plus all of the corporate management side and accounting and all that, when you see something needs doing, you just do it. And so I ended up being receptionist, therapist, retailer, manager.
Wearing many hats.
Wearing every hat. And when someone else couldn't do it, I would do it. And so I learned, that's my big lesson now, is that you have to not be everything. You've got to train and empower other people to be able to. Well,
you learned a lot along the way, though.
I did. So anyway, so I did that for a year with Gillette and setting up spas for them around Australia. But then someone bought in one day, they bought into the spa this book called The Tropical Spa by Sophie Benj. And I was looking at these gorgeous spas in that book, and they were so different to what was happening in Australia at that time. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'd love to do that at some point. I think it was like the next week, I was reading Spa Australasia magazine, and there was this job ad for a company called Spa of Siam, and a spa consultancy based in Thailand. And I thought, oh, cool, well, maybe that would give me opportunity. And so anyway, got the director of that company, flew to Australia, interviewed me, got the job, and he said, okay, so when can you move? I was like, what? Sorry? And when can you move to Thailand?
Oh, and you're like, I didn't know that was part of it.
I didn't know that was part of it. I mean, I had already worked for 4 years in Thailand in my advertising role. So I had the Asian experience, but I didn't know this job was there. And so he said, well, we're called Starr of Siam. Where do you think it was based? And so anyway, picked up, moved to Thailand the next month. This is in 2000. And then that was brilliant because basically Simon Flint, who was the head of that company, was also the head of what became Fitness First Asia. So he had the fitness arm, but he needed all of the hotels and resorts that they had fitness in were starting to put spas in. And he needed someone to set up the spas in all of those different hotel brands.
Wow.
So that was an amazing job because I got to work with pretty much every 5-star and more brand in Asia Pacific, creating new spa concepts for them and then setting that up and then running them. So that's
and learning
brilliant.
From the ground up.
Learning from the ground up. And Simon was an absolutely awesome director to learn from because he had, coming from the fitness side, he's got a lot more of the business management in the hospitality side. So that was brilliant. So I learned at 100 miles an hour for that. And that was working all through Asia Pacific. So that was great. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I'd been maintaining a long distance relationship with someone in Australia, and then decided to get married, and he'd been transferred to the Philippines. So I then quit that job in Thailand to go and move to the Philippines. And at that point, I had to basically set up my own business. And so that's when I started my own consultancy in 2002. So have I been raving at you enough? I can keep going in terms of...
You have such a good memory. So let's jump forward. I probably met you around then or shortly after that. When you left the Philippines, where did you go next?
Yes, so actually that would be right. So the Philippines, at that point, I'd started my business, but because of the wellness background, my first client was Kamalaya, the wellness resort.
That's a pretty good first client.
Oh my God, because they'd actually walked in the door when I was at Starr of Siam. And then when I set up my own business, because of the rounded wellness thing, not just spa, they'd asked if I could help with their pre-opening planning. And so that was my first client. And I tell you what, I couldn't have wished for a better first client.
They're just the nicest people.
They're the nicest people, and that for me, they absolutely epitomise the ideal client in that they're following their passion, and it's the commitment to their concept and quality that's number one. And then they just trusted in that and executed it to the letter. There was never any compromise, even when it did cause some hardship for them as a company. They would stick with their vision and what they wanted to do. And then basically, of course, the success came as a result of that.
And so now it's a multi-award winner.
Oh, and they deserve it. They're just the nicest people, the best brand. And I've been so excited to sort of see that growth because I feel like I played a little part at the beginning.
Of course you
did.
And
I feel like I'm still part of that family. So that was great. So they were my first client. And with the pre-opening planning. And then after that, I started working with Shivasom, all of this from a distance from Thailand. My husband was transferred to Singapore in 2004, and that's when I moved to Singapore, and that's when I would have met you at the, I'm going to call it Spa Asia conference.
Probably, yes.
Yep. And so then I was based in Singapore for a few years and then Shanghai and off from there.
And when did you work at Shivasom?
So Shivasom, I'd actually met Joy Menzies, who became the managing director of Shivasom. I met her when I was living in Thailand, working in advertising in the 90s. And she used to run pubs and restaurants at that time. And she was the owner of the local pub a British pub that I used to go to as my regular. So when I came back to Asia years later, or Thailand years later, I met up with Joy again, and at that stage she was selling her business and she was going to work with Shivasom, following her passion as well. And she knew my background from the advertising and business days, and that I'd also done all the wellness. So I came in to really help Shivasom prepare for international expansion, because the company, was receiving so many inquiries, but it was very much a Thai family business, and Joy wanted to build up the systems for international expansion. So that was my job, because it was something I could do remotely. So while I was in Philippines or Singapore or China, wherever,
excellent.
I would spend, 3 weeks there, 1 week in Thailand working with the property. And so at that point, it was pretty much a business development role, not so much sales, but business preparation. So getting all the SOPs in order, developing retail product ranges, working with Shivasom Academy to work out what all of the course structures and things were, as well as handling all of the new business inquiries. So yes, I started with working with Shivasom. Joy Menzies was the managing director, and she knew me from my previous life in advertising when in Thailand. And so Joy brought me in to be able to basically prepare the company for international expansion, because at that stage it was a sort of a Thai family business, but they were getting hundreds of inquiries from around the world wanting a Shivasom here or there. And so my job was basically to be able to help the company by preparing the SOPs. I also did, true biz development in terms of looking at developing a retail range for them, working with Shivasom Academy to be able to sort of make sure all the training was in place. What else was I doing? Oh, and handling all of the international business inquiries. But so I think I was with them for 11 years, up until 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how you met
But
Joy.
at that point, because I was always... Well, I'd met Joy when I was working in advertising.
Oh, right.
I'd spent a stint living in Thailand. She was my pub owner there, and but just as so, this was in the 90s. I was 4 years in Thailand, and then she was running the pubs and restaurants. And then when I came back, she was in the process of just selling those and going to work in as initially general manager and then becoming managing director of the whole company. And she was sort of looking to get a team who could help the business grow. So that one was a job. I never actually worked full-time in the operation. It was always remote. So I was from Philippines or Singapore or China. And then when I did live in Bangkok, I was working with the head office there. So that was a great 11 years.
Unbelievable that it was that long. Excuse me. So after Shivasom, you went and started your own company again?
Yes. So I think, as head of business development, I think I was the only BD director on the planet who was hired to say no, pretty much, as my main job description, because Shivasom has a very specific brand that they're very protective about, and also with my own background in advertising, you're very familiar with, well, is it the right location, target market, budget? Are the owners well aligned in terms of their objectives? So
you knew how to see the big picture in a way.
You knew how to see the big picture, and also Shivasom was very, very selective in what they wanted to do. They didn't want to do a lot of projects. They just wanted to have a few that were going to be good representations of that brand. And so I think after 294 qualified yeses, that I'd gone through, done the background due diligence on it, but 220, I think 294 actually no's. It was like, okay, there's so many businesses out there who want this kind of thing, but because there's not much reference for people, they just want to copy what Shivasom is doing, and it's not right for their location and their market. So the idea behind Destination Spa Management is that we would, this is being Joy, myself, and Sharon Menzies, we would work with each client to be able to come up with, well, what's the wellness model that's right for you, and then set it up for them. And then the idea was that we would manage it for them behind the scenes. So it's under their own brand, but we would be the machine behind the the picture. That was the idea behind DSM. What we ended up doing was a lot more of the concept creation and pre-opening, not so much of the management, because we didn't have a big machine behind us, and it was very difficult to be doing that. We were working all through Asia Pacific and Middle East.
Right, multiple countries, and that's
yeah. So I think we created, I've created over 70 wellness concept brands in 15 countries, and managing that was going to be impossible. So we took up more of a management mentoring role, which we much preferred.
For sure. And so, Sam, do you think you benefited by being in Asia at the onset of the wellness concept? I mean, because in much of the rest of the world, spa was just, body treatments and facials.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so lucky, and the Asian experience, actually, I'd learnt this from advertising days. When I was in advertising, I think I was like a junior with 2 years experience when I put up my hand to get a post in Thailand. And I got catapulted straight, as an expat, I got catapulted straight into a management role that maybe I'd have had to have spent 10 years or more working up to in Australia. And because you're literally thrown in the deep end, you end up really, needing to rise to the occasion. So as an expat back then, I got a lot of experience that I wouldn't have had back home. And so then fast forward to my spa days, when I did move to Asia, it was very similar. So back in Australia, all the day spas were a little bit clinical, not sort of very much investment in terms of the facility. Great quality treatments, but the experience just wasn't there. And so then, having seen these spas in Asia, I got to be there. There was only like a handful of spas in Asia when I arrived, all of which were in Sophie's book. And then I got to create like 19 brands within 2 years that were, huge. I think when I started looking at when they started running, I think it was the Asia Spa Awards and Spa Asia Awards, most of the brands that were in there was like, yep, I did that. Wow. Because I was one of the first. There was a couple of consultants, but one of the first in the field, and you get a lot of exposure to a lot of projects that I wouldn't have had back home in Australia, for sure. And also Australia is, it's a big country physically, but the rest of the world perceives it to be too far away and too hard to access. So by being based in Bangkok, it was a very good, or Singapore, then Bangkok, is a very quick and easy hub for reaching the rest of Asia Pacific. Whereas if I'd been based in Sydney, it would have been too expensive and too time difference. And also the business model is very different. Asia Pacific has sort of a much lower cost business model. They throw staff at things that might have to be dealt with, differently in Australia or US or UK. Sure. And also there's a lot more investment in Asia in the facility. And so we were working with absolutely gorgeous facilities, which I normally wouldn't have the budget for back in somewhere like Australia. So it actually was propelled me forward in many ways. So opportunities with global networks and things as well, which I wouldn't have had back here. The other opportunity that it opened up is the opportunities through associations, because in Asia, when you've got people traveling around back and forth, you get to speak to people who are having different experiences in different countries, which in Australia I wouldn't have had opportunity to do. So, that's why we started setting up the national and international associations, is to bring this disparate knowledge and experience together and help each other solve
problems.
Learn from each other. And so, I've worked with 6 national and international associations now, and there's so much leverage that comes out of that in terms of business improvement, connections, etc. So Asia helped in many, many ways. If I'd stayed here, I would be nowhere near, I wouldn't have done half of what I've done now.
Well, luckily it wasn't that far, to get to Asia from Australia.
No.
Didn't you, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't you think about moving to China at one point?
Yes. Well, I did in the end.
You did, and you were learning Mandarin.
Yes. Well, the reason I went to Asia in the first place, back to my advertising days, was I'd been in the industry just a couple of years, and then I noticed there was a job ad for a position in Guangzhou, and in China they were advertising guaranteed cures for AIDS. And I thought, wow, this is cowboy country. This is frontier. At the time, it was like the frontier, and I wanted to be on the frontier. And so that's when I quit my job in Australia to go and take one in China. And they said, oh, look, we don't, why go to China? Why don't you stay with us? We've got a position in Thailand. So I moved over to Thailand instead. So I did put my hand up for China back in the 90s, but then I moved there with my spa life. I moved there in 2008 because my husband was then transferred there at the time. And I was based in Shanghai for basically 3 years, 2008 to 2010. And I loved it. He didn't so much, but China has a wonderful positive energy. I have a love-hate relationship with the way sometimes things are done.
Shanghai is so exciting.
So exciting. There's a real can-do attitude to everything, and it's an opportunity is huge, and so it's a matter, and everyone thinks big, and so you get caught up in that one easily. And so sometimes, whereas my natural tendency is to go, we could do that, I just found myself in China. It was like, hold on, we can do that, but first we need to dot these I's and cross these T's along the way. So that was exercising a part of myself that doesn't normally see the light of day so much. Yeah.
Well, but again, great experience.
Great experience. So when I was in China, I was working as a consultant. That's when I was in my Shivasong days. So I'd be 3 weeks in China, 1 week back in Thailand. But I got to work with some local Chinese clients as well. I was working closely with Fifi Cao, who runs Spa China magazine, and she was also setting up the Spa China Summit. She's awesome in terms of she's the queen of spa over there, and so by working closely with Fifi, she introduced me to a lot of the people and the things that were happening over there, and it's really exciting what they were able to do. I'd be speaking to someone who maybe they'd started their company 2 years ago, and this year they were opening 50 shops, and it's like, what the pace
the speed at which they move is just amazing.
Frightening. It would terrify me, but they really do seize opportunity. Yeah.
So tell us about your new company. What is your new venture about?
I'm so excited about this one. So it's called the Wellness Makers, and I'm basically starting that with another consultant here in Australia called Sonia Sorich. And Sonia and I have had similar experience in that we've been working with high-end clients throughout Asia Pacific over the years, but we find that there's two types of clients that will generally come to us. There's the small, passionate individuals who have an idea and a vision, but actually they don't have the budget to be able to hire an international spa consultant. So they end up having to muddle through a lot of it on their own. And then there's the other type of client who is our customers, who is the high-end hotels, resorts, property developers, who want to get into wellness because it's expected as part of their business model. They see the opportunity in terms of the market and the growth, but it's not necessarily their core passion. And so while we've been servicing that part of the market and doing amazing projects, what we really, really, really want to do is be able to empower that small entrepreneur more. So the idea with the Wellness Makers, it's a platform where we give them all of the learning tools, support, mentoring that they need to do it themselves. So it's sort of, if you like, it's a DIY spa consulting or wellness consulting,
like a coaching
platform.
Kind of thing.
It is, but when I was with Shivasong, because I was seeing these people coming to me that I couldn't help through that brand, I created a course in spa development. There were spa management courses out there, but there weren't any courses that were teaching people how to go from idea to open. So I started this course in spa development. I think over the years I trained 400 odd people, how to go take their idea, go through all of the same things that I would do as a consultant and take it to reality. But it was being delivered as sort of like a 1 week deep dive intensive. So it was very academic. What we're doing with the Wellness Makers is we're taking all of that same knowledge and systems, putting it online as sort of bite-sized educational chunks, if you like, but then tying that to the tools, templates, linking them to the resources that they need in terms of other consultants, suppliers. And so that as they were walking them step by step through every step we'd take as a consultant, and then connecting them to the people and their suppliers and the equipment that they need to make it happen, and giving them the templates. So the idea is that a small entrepreneur can go from idea to open, but with less time, less risk, less mistakes, and less money in the end, because time is money and they're not spending them on mistakes, than it would if they tried to muddle through it on their own. So we're working on that platform, hope to launch it in July. That's the goal. So I'm here with Sonia at the moment getting that up and running. But yeah, we really, really, really want to empower those people who've got a vision but not deep pockets. Yeah.
So will it work by subscription? Like they pay a monthly fee or something to access your info?
No, basically what we want to do, because we want to connect people on an as-needs basis with things. So Sonia might kill me if I use this analogy, but anyway, here goes. If you think of it sort of like the IKEA of wellness, in that you go and you see, you walk into an IKEA and you've got the scenarios of, this vision of how things can be put together, but then you've also got the guide of, okay, here's all of the elements that you need. Here's some instructions how to put it together. And if you don't want to do it yourself, you can hire this team to be able to do it with you. So we're taking the same approach. So if someone maybe has good experience in, let's say, they're a therapist and they've got all of the experience on the therapy side, but they don't know anything about design, then we've got design briefs, we've got connections to architects, interior designers, hydrothermal suppliers. And so then as they go, they can say, all right, well, we can do all the menu stuff, but we need support in this area. And they could just pick and choose the design briefs that they need.
So it's all a la carte. Everything.
It's all a la carte. There will be a program that does glue it all together, though, that if someone wants to buy into the whole program, that takes them the same as I would have, but all the way through, they can. But it's pretty much a la carte. Down the line, we might open a more of a subscription thing to be able to, for people to keep up to date. Sure. But the initial model is to just give people what they need so that they're not spending on stuff they don't need.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. And I know whatever you do, it will be brilliant and cutting edge. So I'm sure it's great to watch.
Well, we've got such a network of wonderful consultants and things around the place, Lisa. I haven't spoken to you about this, but I'm hoping you'll be part of the team.
I'd love to. It sounds fun.
When people need some expertise, we really want to be able to connect them to the specialists in the industry, in their area, in their niche, so that they can get the support that they need. So yeah, that's my current baby. I'm super excited about it. And yeah,
well, there's so much going on. In closing, I'd love to hear from you, Sam, about what you think the next few years hold for us with our business model. I mean, how do you see it morphing?
It's interesting because I see the spa industry that we grew up with is changing a lot. A lot of the entrepreneurs that are coming into the scene are people not necessarily from, say, a therapist background. They're people that, I want a meditation studio that also has a bathhouse, that. And so there's a lot more flexible modeling that's required. People are coming in with different ideas of wellness, not sort of a traditional model. So from the entrepreneur side, there's a lot more innovative concepts coming in. But also as an industry, I find wellness is being taken over not by the hospitality people, but by the tech people. It's the Googles, it's the Facebook, it's being driven by tech. And of course, that's been catapulted forward by the pandemic, where everything's going online, digital, telehealth, etc. And so where I see we're going is a real, it's going to get messy before it gets clearer, but there's going to be a convergence of wellness into all different stratas of society. So I'm looking at how can we put wellness into childcare, into aged care, into corporate, so that whole spectrum of someone's day and their lifespan. How do we put wellness into that? And then how do we glue it all together? And so at the moment, I'm also starting the Australasian Wellness Association, because when I came back to Australia, I noticed the fitness people talk to each other, the beauty people talk to each other, the allied health people
all
talk
in
to each other.
silos and not
All
cross.
in silos, and no one is gluing it all together. And yet our customers are working across that spectrum. The tech people are working across that spectrum. We as an industry have to really get used to working organically with everybody else on a flexible basis. So I see it going very organic, and we're going to have to get used to working in pop-up type relationships where you sort of collaborate with someone for a project, then it may go, or may continue. So I see it's going to get messy in terms of everything. You're going to have to get used to change. We've always put a lot of emphasis on SOPs and doing everything very strictly and consistently, and training. We're going to have to get a lot better at thinking on our feet, responding in the moment. And really, I think this is where meditation is going to play a good part, especially for me, is being able to look at what's happening in that moment and respond to that need. And thinking outside the box, having collaborations with people outside of the wellness space to be able to expand wellness in there. I don't know if I answered your question, Lisa.
No, you did. And that hits on something that we've identified as a trend as well. I mean, I'm part of the consulting task force for global wellness, and we are talking about the trends we're seeing. And that's one speaks to what you said, where we consultants will be collaborating with other consultants who maybe do things we didn't, or they're from industries we're not from, and because the models, as you said, are getting muddier. They're interesting combinations, and I think it's all going to be great, but it is going to be a time of transition, I'm sure. But good things wait.
Yeah, and I think the thing that comes up out of that is protectiveness. I mean, something that I find is that you can't, a lot of course, IP is valuable, but we need to, in a sense, I think, develop more trust with each other as a network. And, if I'm setting up, say, an integrated wellness centre, I can't know every single detail about the cutting edge thing of functional medicine and biohacking and fitness. And, I need to be able to work with other people. That's going to require give on my part of my knowledge, my experience, etc. And I'm hoping that it would be on theirs as well. So I think we, as a network, to be really effective in creating projects that work and benefiting the end users, benefiting the business, we're going to have to be trusting and very open and transparent with the way that we work with each other, being very protective about, this is my IP, you can't see it, whatever. We're going to have to dance around that to sort of say, okay, how do we protect things in a way while at the same time being able to work organically and cooperatively with each other. So that's a challenge, I think, that's coming up, but it will be necessary.
Well, it's going to be exciting to see what happens as we move forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person sometime soon, now that our restrictions are slowly rolling back. We're going very quickly here in the US. I know it's slower in the rest of the world, but as the vaccination rates increase. So hopefully, Sam, we'll see each other before the end of the year somewhere.
Oh, I hope to give you a hug in person sometime soon. That'd be amazing.
So this was Sam Dunn. Thank you so much again for joining us. Look her up on LinkedIn and read what she reads and follow what she follows, because she is the bomb. Thanks again for joining us, Sam.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.